So just looking at teaching standard 5, adapting teaching, respond to the strengths and needs of all pupils. Um, just at the start point for my weekly training meeting, I had a target of differentiation for the previous week, which I have worked on and developed. However, to further this, me and my mentor agreed that one way I'd look to differentiate further would be to create differentiated resources to enable me to adapt my teaching to respond to the strengths and needs of all of my pupils. So that was a focus for my week. That main focus came from my last lesson I conducted with my 10Y class. I completed a components of fitness lesson. I mixed it with some fitness testing as well, and as you can see here, not many of the students achieved what I intended for them to achieve. So green would be they achieved the learning outcomes and was on task throughout. Amber, they would achieve some of them, but they didn't understand fully. So I made as it says, there's two complicated activities. Students did not understand the components or meanings, as so the learning objectives weren't achieved. So in that, that's one of my start points, as it can be seen as my learning objectives wasn't met. So instead of just moving on and accepting that, I decided to think about different ways to teach the lesson, which seemed to hopefully work out, and I just took through how I worked on lessons to ensure that they got the components of fitness I required them. Just looking at the importance of differentiation. Differentiation is essential within a classroom environment to ensure we meet the needs of all children within our class. Hayes and Styler 2013, Gershon 2013 and Fitzgerald 2016 all highlight the importance of differentiation within a classroom. Despite this, it's difficult to identify techniques which can be effective in ensuring all students achieve the same desired outcomes due to differences in students' skills and preferences. So it's just saying here that although we can trial ways for differentiation, there's no guaranteed way which will most suit students or work within a lesson. So just looking at my action point of how I implemented my differentiation into my lesson plan to meet the needs of the students. So just give a background. As I said, my last lesson I was focused on all the components of fitness, and that didn't seem to work with alongside the fitness testing. It was all too much for the students. So I was looking mainly at 4 components of fitness, which were muscular endurance, speed, agility, and muscular strength. So at the start, I created a starter task where the students would be in 4 teams with differentiated teams. So so they'd be in a relay race. They would run to the end, do 5 star jumps, and then they would collect 1 slip from the envelope, bring it back, and it was a mix and match task to ensure that they could work out the 4 components of fitness and the 4 definitions for them, which we was focused on. So that was my first way I looked to differentiate. I also had a student with low levels of English literacy, and his main language was Czech, so I ensured I differentiated and put his language in, which we'll see later on. So just looking at that now, so I had differentiated groups, so I didn't clearly say level 1, level 2, I just colour coded them and put them in their groups there. And here was my higher abilities group. So there's missing keywords, and they had to work out what the keywords which wouldn't link up. So muscular endurance would be the ability to use voluntary muscles many times without becoming tired. Again, with speed, muscular strength, and agility. So here would be the middle group of how I differentiated. That's my higher ends. This one just here. So it would be my middle group. So I ensured it was just a mix and match task of 4 different new terms, which to them. However, I didn't miss out any of the key words to ensure they were able to access the same information and achieve the learning outcomes. And here was my final group with my student Marek, who speaks very little English and main language Czech. So I ensured that I had his language in, so he could access the learning objectives and achieve what I desired. So that was that group there, just for level 4. So that was the first way I looked to differentiate, and I'll go straight. I'll move. So just looking on afterwards, they were working through a circuit. So looking at the 4 components of fitness and how they can look to develop those. At each station, there was a station card which Yeah, there was a station card. So at this station card, there was an explanation of how, with a picture of how we're looking to, what we're looking to do at the station. So here was burpees and ways we can look to differentiate, and was challenging the student at what level, or advising the student at what level they should be working up to make it harder. That was our burpees, for example. Our tricep dips, again, it's an easy level. They could do it on the floor, just rocking back, leaning back and forth to still working those triceps, but not as much. Again, we can make it harder by having knees bent while on the bench, and even harder to really extend the legs. Again, there were some shuttle sprints, bicep curls with different weights, press ups with different grips we can look to use. All of those can be seen further on my teacher standard page, but there's different levels at each station to look to differentiate to meet their needs, and challenge the student really, so to meet the needs of their students. As again, also Marek, my student with very low English, I made this document for him, so he still had access to all the pictures of students, and hear in his language exactly what was doing at each station, how to make it harder. He also had a TA with him, so I made sure that was he was working alongside him and a few other students to make sure they were achieving what I expected of them. So there are three main ways we look to differentiate the groups. Also, at the end they use. I'll go on to explain it later, but they used the slips which we had, which they got from the envelope, and put them on the map of the circuit to see where they thought each station was, which component they thought it was working. But you can see that later on the impact section. So just looking at the importance of the groupings, for example, effective teachers understand that meeting the literacy needs of every child in a diverse class is essential. Effectively embedding in planning and preparation of lessons increases the chances of all students successfully meeting the desired outcome, and increases the likelihood of students making progress. That's Cooling 2003. So this is just saying that ensuring that we plan effectively and differentiate, embedding it into our plan and delivery will hopefully ensure students meet the desired outcome and make progress. So we can just see here was my middle group, and they were able to match up all the key components with the definitions effectively. And here was my group one with the missing words, and I would speak through them, and when I asked them to call it out, they were able to identify the missing words of what they thought, what the missing words were for the definitions. And again, my final group with Marek, so he could access the same content as well. So that was one impact we looked to, which benefited from my differentiation. Another one was, as I said, afterwards I would put on, this one isn't so much differentiation, but it's still showing the impact of my my task sheets. I had my map off of the class and what station I moved to, and they had to put up what component they thought worked at different ones. So it just shows here that they understood what was required of them, and what the actual component is, and how we look to train it. So just looking at the final couple of impacts. As I said in my last lesson, not many of my students were able to achieve the learning objectives, and I maintained similar ones, or I'm just made them more simplified to make sure that they and differentiate the lesson, and all my students were able to meet the learning objectives as which can be seen here. So an effective way of differentiating through the methods I just discussed to meet the needs of my students. Just looking at the final impact, just to prove that how my teaching and differentiation impact the teaching. This was my formal assessment with Alan, and on his feedback he said that differentiated task cards were effective and afforded students a choice of technique, easier, harder. Many students could identify the components being used at each station. Effective use of TA was excellent, particularly with a non-English student who used a differentiated worksheet, and his answer just proves that differentiation actually did work. Again, here just saying the TA was effective. Yeah, so it's just showing how my differentiation worked effectively. Just looking at the reference reference list here can be seen to identify the references which I use throughout. However, any more information we look to see, or we can look to view the different resources which I use, can be seen under the TS5 page under my teaching standards. Thank you.